Jennifer Mack's The Construction of Equality. So we've been talking about a problem-based approach in cultural anthropology and have turned our attention to contemporary ethnography. Topically, we're looking at immigration and its relationship to things like ethnic conflict. We talked about globalization and the increasing integration of people from around the world and its embeddedness in international political economy, whereby political and economic resources are stratified unequally across populations. This leads really to questions and discussions around integration of migrants in different societies and the role of interculturalism, the sharing of society by more than one culture, the reciprocal relationship of different cultural groups in a society, and so on. Today we want to get into Mack's The Construction of Equality, Syriac Immigration, and the Swedish City. So Jennifer Mack is taught at Uppsala University and KTH Stockholm, although she is a U.S. citizen and was originally born here in the United States. Her work, The Construction of Equality, brings anthropology to different kinds of theoretical and public policy questions about architecture and urban planning, national history, equality, and power among immigrants in Sweden. Methodologically, she uses a complex ethnographic toolkit with observational methods, interviews, archives, and what we could call participatory research. So a significant portion of the time of her doing research, she was with an internship. She interned in the Södertälje Municipal Planning Department in Sweden. So, in addition to being a kind of detached researcher, she was serving a role within the society and within the thematical problem that she was working on. That is the Syriac immigration and the Swedish urban environment. So Syriac migration in Sweden. For Mack, she's really focused on Södertälje's significant Syriac minority in their enclaves like Rana and Rosalyn, ethnic neighborhoods within Södertälje with various kinds of football arenas and cultural associations that are associated with the Syriac people. They are identified with ancient Assyrian and Mesopotamian territories, places like present-day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. They speak an Aramaic dialect known as Syriac, and they are also associated with distinct varieties of Christianity, such as the Syriac Orthodox Church. Due to various wars in the Middle East, there have been significant pushes, of Syriac population out of places like Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. And Sweden's own needs for labor, a fairly robust political asylum and social welfare policy offers us a pull on Syriacs to migrate to Sweden. So Mack in this text is looking at the political relations between native Swedes and migrants like the Syriac. She focuses on how the political relation between natives and migrants is shaped through government policy, specifically towards the built environment. So not government policy generally, but specifically that which we would think of as urban planning, municipal planning, and more generally the built environment. So Sweden, it's partially famous globally, really brings a modernist approach to political governance in the contemporary world. The idea for this approach was to eliminate social differences, to universalize society so that it served all peoples equally. And what this translated into was a policy that really sought to assimilate migrants, for them to integrate right into Swedish society in the existing modernist approach. So Sweden would come in with experts and bureaucrats and disperse in migrating Syriac people, different location sites throughout the country, and would often use standardized public housing, often the same kind of public housing that would be offered to Swedes through the social welfare programs. But in an unexpected outcome, or unintended outcome, if you will, through their own sense of their difference, Syriac migrants then pursued their own plans. And after they became established in Sweden, they began to modify the built environment in their own way. So they began to build single-family homes, often ostentatious and exemplary of the wealth of the owner, which was uncommon in Sweden, wasn't a norm in Sweden at the time. Build large churches also with Syriac architectural styles, and cemeteries that often were planned, designed, and implemented in ways that were quite a bit different than Swedes' own cemeteries. And you add that this is occurring right within increasingly enclave neighborhoods, so that the Syriac that were relocated through dispersed sites in Sweden ended up gathering together on their own initiative in particular neighborhoods. So she's really focused on local agency and integration when we're looking at issues around immigration, when we're looking around issues such as integration of migrants into host societies. Sweden's immigration policy really showed limits to state-sanctioned kind of social welfare programs for immigrants, or just general kind of multicultural approaches. And that's the case of urban planning in Sweden, that migrants, in integrating in their own terms, will ultimately modify and transform modernist ideals, state-led design, and sort of top-down government planning. So it really, the Swedish case, that is, really is a case where we look at there is an overtly assimilationist policy that's being pursued by the state, and a truly integrative approach is being developed from the bottom up by migrants themselves, who sort of have their own way of life, identify with that, and although they are pushed out of their homelands and they are pooled into places like Sweden, they don't adopt necessarily ideals and the principles of their host states. So one person in the ethnography is quoted, "If you have a street with a Syriac name, you have a feeling of belonging in the total image of Sototalia. You are included in a different way. It makes you care about the city in another way. I belong to the city, and the city belongs to me." So in conclusion, we've been talking about Mack's The Construction of Equality, and the issue, right, of Syriac migration and Swedish planning. In Mack's ethnography, we observe, right, the local agency of Syriac migrants as they struggle to integrate themselves into Swedish society in their own way, a way that reflects their own sense of identity.